everyone. We're glad that you chose to join us this afternoon. We appreciate your time. We're going to make that time, we're going to make the best use of it and try to give you some information that might be helpful, especially as you manage capital programs and how you manage the process of determining what your next capital program is going to look like. So I've got three wonderful speakers with me today. Let me briefly introduce first our company, Kahua. We have created the world's leading project management information system. You'll hear us use that term. We'll probably refer to that as PMIS the rest of the day. The world's leading PMIS for owners, but available for contractors, subcontractors, and really niche groups of any kind. We've got Kahua packaged for anyone in the construction business. And we're happy to talk to you about that anytime after our webinar. Today, though, our intent is really to share some valuable information from the people that are doing works in capital projects and programs. Today, in the case of K-12, really the topic is applicable for almost any institutional builder, any perpetual builder. So let me introduce our guest today. I'm going to start with Cherie Chenoweth. Cherie is with San Juan Unified School District. Cherie, tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing at San Juan.
Well, good afternoon or good morning to some people. I'm Cherie Chenoweth. I'm here at San Juan Unified School District. I work in the Facilities Business Department. I have been over here for 20 years. I've been in this industry for about 19. And a little bit about what we're doing is we're trying to be innovative and we're trying to create one system for our entire use. So currently that's what we're working on. We're doing it step by step. And it's been definitely a journey as we do this. A little bit about me. I have all of fiscal and, just so you know, all of procurement under me, which is very unique in the school districts and sometimes in the industry. And when I'm not working, I spend time with my grandkids.
Excellent. Thanks, Cherie, and thanks for being with us today. Christine Mulholland is with VM3 Consulting. Christine, tell us about yourself, your work.
Yes,
and about
thanks,
VM3.
Nicholas. Yeah, so Jason and I founded VM3 almost a year ago, but I've been working in the education industry my whole career. So I've kind of wore all hats. I started off as a GC, working on design build school projects in the state of California. Also some hospital projects, and then kind of transitioned due to life and needing to relocate, transition to construction management work, and ultimately program management work, and just helping clients. So we've been on this journey with Cherie since, I think it's been almost 10 months, I'd say. We've been working hard on trying to make all of her dreams come true. But it's been really exciting to kind of have this thought in our brains on how we can get this all together and have it come to reality.
I love the way we talk about the work you guys are doing as dreams coming true. We're going to come back to that later. Jason Villanueva, also with VM3. Jason, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So, hi, everybody. My name is Jason Villanueva, and I am the other half of VM3. As far as my experience, I've been in a couple other industries, refining, oil and gas, a lot of utilities as well, and then made my way over to vertical construction and then schools, hospitals, etc. So a lot of my specialty has come from project controls and project management as well. So a lot of the data part of stuff has always interested me, and assets have always been a lot of those issues with many industries, not just construction, but even in manufacturing like that. So, Cherie kind of presented a problem and says, hey, this is an industry issue. And, Christine and I have partnered for a very long time, even in our past companies. And we've had solutions to this, but we had never assembled it all together until this team was actually, brought together. And then obviously with the help with Kahua as a primary platform for us, it really enabled us to push that dream to reality, which is something we're really, really excited about.
So what's life like for you, Jason, after work?
After work is work. So, being new business owner, there's a lot of figuring out things. For me personally, the passion is problem solving. So, I tend to love to do things like that. I do have a weird hobby. I do like to ride unicycles. So I get either chastised or amazed, depending on what side of that um, thing you fall on. So.
All right. Well, I know there has to be some YouTube video of that. We'll ask you to post that in the chat as we go along here today.
Absolutely.
All right. We've got an agenda today. I want to speak briefly about what we refer to as the asset-centric approach, or asset-centric project management as a methodology. And I'm simply going to say that there's a problem that we've created in our industry when we began to digitalize data. Years ago, we provided owners with documentation in paper. I'm old enough to be the guy that started in the business when we created drawings with paper and ink, and we did that by hand. We, of course, have moved everything, and everything's become digital. And in doing that, our information's become digital. We no longer hand over volumes and volumes of paper. We hand over volumes of data. And since we've created digital data, what the owner needs, what an owner like a school system like Cherie represents needs, is data to operate the assets that we have designed and constructed for them. You can't manage a facility or a series of facilities without critical asset data to know what it is that I'm managing and operating. Well, we've handed that over as paper for many years, and now we do it digitally, but it tends to be as a PDF or a spreadsheet, not as a robust database that's usable by the operations team on the owner's side. That's the problem that we're going to talk about solving today. It's a problem that's existed for 30 years, and we finally have a solution to it today. So that'll be the main topic that we're addressing here today: how we handle that data and how that data can then feed a continuous assessment process and help us plan our next capital program. Cherie, I'll ask if there are other things as we talk about this. Are there particular requirements? We've got lots of K-12 folks on our audience today. We do have other government agencies. We've got other commercial entities, but our focus today is on K-12. In California, aren't there unique funding requirements that tie into this, this desire to capture better information?
Yeah, so, those of you that are in California and in schools know that they just recently passed legislation that you have to have your facilities master plan updated in order for you to qualify for state funding. So there is lots of rules and regulations around that. And even if you had something in line when it did get passed, you have a resolution that you need to do to your board. But you also have to present it to your board, and you have to make sure that the board approves what your plan is, and all those regulations have to, but first you got to have the plan to be able to do that.
So you have to have this master plan and able to ask for money for capital construction.
Yes, it's for state matching funds, correct.
Okay. And isn't it true that generally speaking, you had to have this kind of documentation, this kind of plan, in order to get voter approval to spend funds, whether they were state matched or not?
Yeah, so when you're typically going for a bond, which many people know, is that you got to show those taxpayers and everything what you're doing with their money. So some of the things that you're going to see today, we've captured that, but not only that, we're also capturing in telling a story. Because if you keep that story going for your taxpayers, when you go for another bond or you go for anything else, you can say, look at what we've done, and we followed this plan that we have told you for so long. So the challenge has always been keeping it updated and keeping people notified. And throughout the years of doing this, everybody wants something different. Mm-hmm. And so this is really going to show how we kind of captured all of that.
All right, so you've also helped kind of walk us through our agenda. We're going to talk about how we can improve the process of facility condition assessments, and thereby helping us in the process of creating a facility master plan or a capital improvement program. We'll tell your story to do that, and then we'll talk about ways you guys are trying to do even more with what you have. So And then
Yeah,
we will
and
have
I'd
time
also
at the
say-
end. So
and I'd
I'll
also
ask
say,
the audience
Nicholas,
to prepare that we'll have time at the end for Q&A. So you can put those questions in the chat or in the Q&A section at any time. I'm sorry, Cherie, you were saying?
I was going to also say, as they're looking at this presentation, they can also be looking at this through the lens of maintenance and operations and how they can implement this as well. So not just those capital improvement plans, but also through the maintenance lens as well.
Which is a big part of this asset-centric approach that Jason's going to talk to us a bit about now.
Sure. So, all right, everybody. So, traditionally in construction, you build something, you have an asset, and you hand it over. Another group kind of takes it over, and then it's lost in the ether. So both, you have multiple departments not talking to each other. What we wanted to really do in order for this to work is to create an approach that relied on a common denominator. And for us, that common denominator was the asset itself, right? You're installing it during construction, you're maintaining it after the fact, and then you're retiring it, and then basically installing a new asset. So throughout all of that life cycle of planning, of maintenance, the one consistent thing that we saw was the asset itself. So what we really wanted to do was change the mindset of the industry, change the mindset of everybody who works with the asset, so that now the asset is the centerpiece of your construction, of your maintenance operations. It's probably already like that for maintenance, but now we're shifting into the mode where in construction, the asset becomes the centerpiece. Whether the asset is a building itself or a boiler or an HVAC system, it becomes the asset. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Yeah, Jason, for clarity, I was going to jump in there, and I think you just answered a bit. We talk about building the asset. So if
Correct.
I'm an owner, a portfolio manager, I might refer to the asset as a campus.
That's right.
I might refer to it as a building. But what we're going to generally talk about today are those components of our building or of our utility, of our road system, those components that we want to do maintenance on, that we need to operate, and that we use other tools for to do those things.
Yeah, so that's correct, Nicholas. When we refer to an asset, that mentality can be at a high level where you're talking about the building itself, or in this case, when we talk about the physical assets that make up that building, it can be applied really at all levels. But really what we needed to do was we needed to find a foundation to create that thing that is going to centralize that asset. And that thing was Kahua, right? It was the ability to take all of this information from different places and start tagging that to the asset. So because the asset is a centralized thing, we can start to add additional information to it. So for example, the asset itself is already going to come with warranty information, operations manual, things like that. But what we wanted to do is take it a step further to say, okay, well, when was it installed? Is there additional information that we can add on to it, like the RFI that was generated, or even the submittal that was generated for that asset? We needed a place that could really take all of this information and even generate additional information so that we can tag it to one asset. Now, that information can really be spread amongst all of these different business units that have a reliance on this information. So what you're kind of seeing on the screen here is the foundation for how we created an asset-centric model with inputs from not only external applications, but extensions of Kahua that are available for everybody to use.
So Kahua has created something called an asset manager, asset repository, and you can take data from your previous facility condition assessment, feed it into the asset manager. You can take data from your capital projects, whether you collected it during planning, design, procurement, construction, commissioning. All that information is captured using the Kahua platform, using those everyday tools for construction administration, captured and put into your asset manager. And you're going to tell us later a little bit more about scenario planning, how we can use all that to do scenario planning.
Right, exactly. So now the ability to, the hardest thing to get folks to change, especially if you implement a new system, is a new system, right? We wanted to create a model where everybody who's using their existing system can continue to use it, but also contribute to this model so that it's still able to collect information and they're still able to use whatever familiar system they're using, or implement a new system that is already part of the Kahua net as well, for use. So
okay, so those systems that the operator uses after a project, and we should say up front, we're generally speaking, we're project people. We focus on capital improvement programs and projects, and we hand these things over. After our 2-year or 3-year project, we hand it over to a team that's going to manage it and maintain it for 50 or 60 or more years. Okay. So, hey, Christine, talk to us a little bit about this FCA and FMP process.
Yes. So Sheree and I are going to go into these in the next slides, but in a perfect world, your capital improvement planning is driven by your data. And Nicholas mentioned it in the beginning of the webinar, that back in the day, this was and still in some cases today, this is a binder on the shelf or a PDF, filed on your computer. And the capital improvement planning that the data that drives the capital improvement planning in the K through 12 or TK through 12 world is our FCA, or facilities condition assessments, and the facilities master plans. But you'll hear from Sheree her pain, but what happens for everyone that's on this call that's gone through an FCA, that's gone through an FMP? I'm curious, I don't think we have a poll question for this, but how usable was that information after 1 year or 2 years or 3 years? Sheree will talk about that, but for us, now we can go to the next slide. I'm going to talk about the facilities condition assessments. So specific to this journey we've been on with San Juan, where we started. So there's no centralized database for the assets. So what does that mean? We can't know and be proactive about any of our assets. It wasn't being tracked. The condition of the assets weren't being tracked. And most of that information was all living in the brains of the peoples on the site, right? The custodians, the M&O staff, the principals, maybe teachers, maybe even some students are noticing a leaky faucet, right? So there was no, yes.
Let me interrupt and ask, you say there's no centralized database for asset information. That means on the operations side, is there no facility management tool? Or is it only used for work orders? What's the situation there?
So the situation for San Juan was they, like many of you on that poll, are using Brightly. But Brightly, when we dove in, we were expecting to see an asset inventory. And what we found was that M&O was using Brightly primarily as a work ticketing system. Okay. And the comments were including, HVAC in classroom 11 not functioning. So it wasn't tagging an asset. We didn't know make and model. We didn't know any of this information. It wasn't even tied to a location, right? It was all typed into a text field. So
Sheree, there are systems, I know that there are systems in place that will do, a more robust job of tracking asset data. You speak with a lot of other districts. Is this the common use for a K-12 district in California, that whatever is used for operations and maintenance is used really just for ticketing or for work orders?
Yeah, it really depends on the programs. I've talked to a lot of districts, and one of the problems is making sure that they know their assets. But I've heard a lot across the industry of how we get here's a great one that happened, and it's, ESSER funds, and they gave us a bunch of funds that were federal funds, and now we can go and do all these projects, but we have to have an assessment and see what HVAC unit we really want to do, or what in what order. And you have to go out there and you have to run out to each site and figure out where your assets are or what's going on, or you need that supervisor that maybe runs that department of HVAC. That's just not really the data that tells the story.
Okay. I talk a lot about project handoff and owners taking data off that thumb drive and those thousands of PDFs, literally thousands of PDFs, and hundreds of spreadsheets, and having to recreate that in their operations and maintenance database. What I'm hearing is that, and I talk about that because it's a big problem. It costs the owners a fortune. They usually have to hire outside to do it because everybody else has a day job. And it takes months to complete that task. Meanwhile, they're operating their facility, their utility, their factory, whatever it is, they're operating it without knowing what they have in the field. That's a huge problem, and I think people understand that. What I'm hearing from you guys, though, is that too often owners take that thumb drive with thousands of PDFs and spreadsheets and really do nothing with it until there's a problem.
I love my whole theme is always it's a book on the shelf, and who's going to go back to the book on the shelf? Yeah. We used to be so paper driven, and we never got away from the paper driven, and so it's still the book on the shelf. But just imagine if you have 82 sites and you have one person that's able to go and find out that information, and you know you have 200 projects a year, and now you got to find out when the last time it was that we actually touched that unit. So.
Yeah. All right, Christine, I cut you off at where we're going. Thanks for letting me interrupt. No worries.
No, I like the conversation. So where we're going, we kind of are touching on it already, but we want to be proactive. We don't want to be reactive. We don't want to wait until a boiler breaks, you know, something goes down and now instruction is impacted, right? That's the biggest thing for schools. If we can't teach our students in those classrooms, what are we going to do? It's a mad scramble. And I'm sure going back to, you know, Brightly not having a asset inventory, I'm sure it goes back to what you mentioned. You've got 82 sites. Who is going to go and spend all that time to get all that information into Brightly? I'm sure the district was planning on having it operating with all their assets in there. It just never came to fruition. So where we're going now is we're utilizing Kahua as our database for all of our assets. We've loaded up all of the locations for all 82, 85 sites. And we're going through, as part of the FCA, we went through and the team has identified all the deficiencies across all sites. So that initial baseline of deficiency assets are putting in. And I highlight that because it's a lot of sites. And the district chose in the beginning, you know, let's start with the assets that have deficiencies, because those are going to be our headaches. If something was just installed, let's not take the time right now to get all that information in. And I bring that up because we're talking about continuous facility assessments, and Jason will go into the FCA app later. But if you only have your deficiency assets, well, then what are we going to do when there's new assets too, right? We want all that information. So we're laying out the process for the district to be able to solicit the help of their MNO, to solicit the help of all of our CMs on site, our project teams that are on site, that when they're doing and completing work or when they're addressing work orders, if that asset's not already in the system, pull up your FCA app, log it in, quick and easy on your mobile device so that we can start collecting all the assets that were maybe in great condition initially. So the solution that we also wanted to have, did we switch slides? It looks like we moved on. That's fine. We can move on.
We're on the facility master plan slide. Is that the one you're seeing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So the facilities master plan, so let's talk a little bit about what we did, is that we had, in 2014, we had an award-winning binder on the shelf. That is what we had. It was a great idea. And I got to tell you, we won awards. We did all kinds of things. We thought it was great. Within 1 year, it was outdated. And it now became, well, we'll pull it out. We'll write all over it. We'll do what we can. And then my dreams started happening. I wish it was this. I wish. And so now that's where we're going. We're going to be going to actually looking at what we have done and those dreams that we've all had coming true. And I really feel like this is an industry change. This right here is going to help so many people, and that I just absolutely love. So the solution and driving this through has been a lot of work, and I will say that, but I feel like the next groups and the next people that take this on, it's going to be much easier for them.
Cherie, you said that your award-winning binder, your book on the shelf, was no good after just a few months, certainly after a year. For clarity, I want to just point out to people and make sure we have this right. It's no good because it is a report based on conditions on a certain date. This is where we were on that date as best we could tell. Therefore, this is what we think we should do next.
Yeah.
Because
So,
that's a static piece of information that it's not dynamic, it doesn't update itself. In no time at all, what our condition is not what it was 3 months ago or 6 months ago or a year ago. Is
yeah,
that
and
what
like
makes
what I
it
said,
outdated?
yeah. So like what I said, we do about 200 projects, plus we're fast district doing a lot of things. And so if you don't capture that, it's quickly outdated. The other thing is it doesn't tell your community what you're doing. It doesn't give you, it's a book.
Right.
And so what the dream and the hope is that someday we could have that book, that snapshot in time, but then also have where we went with all the dollars that we spent that was taxpayers' dollars. What did we do? And what's the story? And then also, can we take it further and can we make it updated and keep showing that snapshot every year? So let's see, can we?
Okay.
Yep.
Or can we do it?
We're talking about real-time prioritization of projects based off of progress.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Are we able to begin to talk about doing this continuously?
Yep.
I think so. So
Okay.
we said about 10 months ago, own your assets or they'll own you. And by that, we mean, the whole scenario where something goes down and now that asset just owns you. And now you have no instruction for that day in that classroom. And that's a stressful life for everyone in the school community when that happens, including the parents, including the kids. So now Jason's going to go over what we plan to do, why we want to do it. And now that we're going to go through kind of the how we get there throughout the process, how we make this continuous.
Thanks, Christine. Okay, so here we have the Kahua application. And for those of you who are already familiar or unfamiliar with Kahua, Kahua is built on applications and really the ability to create new applications and also utilize applications that are already existing out there, such as facility conditions assessments and asset manager. So as we showed off in earlier slides, the foundation of the asset-centric model for us, the key foundation really was Kahua, and then all of these other applications, both that are external and then also applications that are already built within Kahua. We needed a central place where we can store asset information, manage asset information, and then add additional information to that asset so that when we're going through these different business units who are using these assets for different things, they can add their own information to it, and we can essentially start sharing information so that, if I have scheduled maintenance on a specific HVAC, yet it's going to be decommissioned and replaced in about a month or two, you probably don't want to do that scheduled maintenance. So Kahua was kind of the perfect platform for that. It allowed us to really take applications in, and also the data that those other applications generated, so it's all in one central place. So the first thing I'm going to show off here is Asset Manager, and we'll kind of go through some of the features of Asset Manager. So right here are a list of asset types that you can kind of pre-create. So if you order the same kinds of scoreboards or even different kinds of scoreboards, like in this example, there are 2 types of scoreboards on here, then also 2 types of HVAC systems. You can preset those so that every time you install a like asset, you don't have to re-key enter everything in. So if you're using the same brand of certain things, same manufacturer, etc., you can already kind of have that pre-installed. So when I go into my assets and I click on the asset tab, you're going to see that I have 4 assigned assets, and they're assigned to very, very specific locations. So within our application, we also want to make sure, especially with San Juan, we want to know exactly where those assets are. So when the FCA was conducted, they listed out the site that it was on, the specific building, all the way down to what room was it in, so that if we have to do a project, we can pick that location and then we can pull up a list of all the assets. So that's kind of one powerful way to do it. So here you're going to see a list of all the assets. If I click into one of the assets in here, I can see just miscellaneous information and attributes that I can add to that specific asset. So I can add things like color, expected useful life, the finish, type of grade. All of these forms are customizable. So if there are certain assets that have certain attributes, you can add those. And then we're going to go through this current condition as we're going through the FCA. But each asset, you can also add linked documents, any references, so that, for example, if I am doing a submittal, I can link that to a specific asset so I know where that asset originated from. And then also I can add things like warranty information in here. I can say when the warranty is going to expire, where the documentation is. So I can assign that documentation an owner's manual directly into Asset Manager so that I can reference it or pull it out. Not only would I have access to it on the project controls or the project management side, but also on the M&O side. You know, there's now one central place where all that stuff can be found. So the assets, this is the central place where everything is kind of being stored and held, so that we can access this information and then add on to it. You know, just to kind of quickly go through it, you can add multiple assets in here. You can also import and export, especially if you have a long list of assets. I know some of the counties out there have thousands and thousands of assets, and you can go into different levels of detail with the asset, right? So depending on your industry and also depending on your company, you can call carpet an asset. I've seen that before, but then also you can stick to specific systems like fire systems or anything low voltage, or even sprinkler systems, whatever the case is. So from here, because asset-centric is kind of the center of everything, we can create RFIs and tag a specific asset to that RFI, to that change order. And that's really the beauty of Asset Manager. It's this place that you can hold asset information that has a ton of attributes. You can add information to those attributes. And ultimately, at the end of any project, you can use these attributes as a checklist to make sure that you have everything you need for commissioning, to close out the project, etc. So how does facilities condition assessment play into that? Well, facilities conditions assessments is really an assessments application that allows an inspector to go out and conduct these assessments on an asset. It's usually a visual check of a condition of an asset. And as you go throughout your day, you are able to quickly and easily open this on your mobile device, create a new inspection on a specific asset, especially if you're already out there and maybe you're in a specific room. You can look at it and do a quick visual inspection, and you'll be able to add information to that asset. So let's go ahead and do one real quick here. So if I click new, and let's pretend I am an M&O user. I'm at a specific location like the main campus, and I will say this is who I am. And I'm going to mark the asset that I'm inspecting. So notice it is only pulling up these two assets based on the location that I filled in. So these locations are tied, these assets are tied to this location, which means that if I have a longer list and I'm in a specific place, whether it's a room or a building, it'll pull all available assets there for me to inspect. And if I find a new asset in there, I can go back to Asset Manager and quickly add it and then do an inspection. And here, all of this information here is generally, it's all customizable depending on your industry and depending on how you want to rate the conditions of all your assets. In this case, we use a standard 1 through 5 rating. 1 means, hey, it needs to be replaced within the year, versus 5 where it's, still pretty good and probably still have a long, useful life. Well, for this scoreboard football field, I'm going to say that, hey, it probably needs to be replaced now, and it probably only has 1 year left remaining. The rest of this information I can mark as mandatory, or I can say, hey, just leave it blank, because I can go back to this record later and verify the information and pull it up. I can also add photos to this. So in this case, I can add a photo of, let's just say, a school. In reality, I would take a picture of the asset and add it in here. Here under assets, I can add what that asset is, and then I can then describe what the deficiency is that I am finding. So here, in this case, again, it's a priority 1. It has 1 more remaining useful life. And then the deficiency that I'm looking at is maybe corrosion on the corners or corrosion on the terminals. and that is active. And I can leave the date resolved open, but I can also add other fields in here if I need to. I can add other photos to this, and I can add multiple deficiencies. So let's say not only did I find corrosion, I also saw that there were, I don't know, cracks and stuff like that. I can add as many deficiencies to that specific asset that I need to. In this case, I'm just going to add one. Once that's complete, I can hit done, and I can save and close this. So what's interesting about that is if I go back to my facilities condition assessment, I can see the last one that I did, which is that main campus scoreboard on the football field. So when I go back to Asset Manager, I can actually take a look at that specific asset, which was, I think, one. And if I scroll down, I should actually be able to see, oh, my apologies, it was actually two. And when I scroll down, I can actually see the most recent condition that this asset was in. And then I can also take a look at what inspections were done previously and any photos that were associated. So now I am gathering historical information every time I take a look at an asset out there, right? You know, you do an FCA once every 5 years. Now you can kind of do it year round, especially if you're already going out there for something else. Why not just pull out your mobile device, take a look at what you see, and create updates on that. And here you can see how maybe over time a condition has deteriorated based on a specific asset. Now we have actionable information, right, for the future. If, hey, if I need to install this other asset, let me take a look in my inventory system to see, am I having the same types of issues across my system with this specific manufacturer or with this specific brand? So what FCA's really allowed us to do was to be able to do these facility condition assessments anytime we wanted to, and within our own staff if we wanted to, or we can give the capability to other folks to come in and do that. So facilities condition assessment is now feeding information into Asset Manager. There are other sources of information, like I mentioned, that we can get this stuff from, to include other CMMSs, any work order systems, stuff like that. So this becomes the foundational piece to our asset-centric mindset. And then with that, I'll kind of turn it over to Cherie and Christine so they can kind of show you what happens next.
Cherie, can you tell us a little bit about, you know, before we started on this journey, what was your vision? What was your dream that led into what we're going to go through next?
Yeah, really quick, I'll just share with you guys. The vision and the dream was really having something that could be easy for us to do because we don't have the manpower, and something that's going to be seamless and that everybody's going to buy into it. But also being able to not pay $1.5 million for a facilities master plan every 5 years or every 10 years or whenever we decide that we need to do one. And for our public and everybody to be able to see what we're doing and have everything in one spot seamlessly and just go. Everybody can just keep on going.
So Cherie,
also, the cost and the inflation is very, very important. That cost and that inflation needs to be included in it. And you need to have where you can kind of play with the numbers, and I don't have to do all that work for all these different people that want to see it. So that was the vision and the dream.
Cherie, you just said $1.5 million for that facility master plan. That's $1.5 million for that award-winning book on the shelf that has no value after a few months.
Yes.
Yeah, I was with a director at Palm Beach County, Florida schools. They had not done a facility condition assessment for 7 years at that point. I think their normal rhythm was every 5 years, but they had just spent $4 million to get a facility condition assessment done. So if we can save that, that's money that can build classrooms.
Yes, and that's all. It's all based on, you know, how many sites you have, what the work is, and all of that kind of stuff. You know, it just depends on what your need is. So ours, this last one, was an update. So what you are going to see is the actual new live dream come true.
This is the conversion of the book on the shelf onto your computer in living format. So is my screen sharing okay before I begin? I think so. All right, so
Yes,
our first page, perfect. Our first page on the dashboard, this is their FMP dashboard. We have the overall definitions, and I will add that this is the public-facing dashboard. So all this information, the public needs to understand, what did we do, right? What was the categories that we used to be able to score and prioritize our school sites? What are our guiding principles, and what is a facility condition assessment? Because not everyone's going to understand what that is in the community. Many of us in the construction industry do, but not everybody. So this page is really informational, giving everyone kind of the lay of the land. The next page, we go into overall general school information. So you can select by your school configuration, you could select by your school site. And this is just a high level, again, community, thinking about that. There's also still going to be a PDF of the FMP, and that's really going to be the one that is the snapshot in time. And then this FMP dashboard will be the living document that keeps going. So if the community ever wanted to download the initial FMP, they could also click on that. It would open up the link, also stored in Kahua. If you download the link, you get the PDF, which is very similar information.
So the one thing I want to add on that really quick, Christine, the only thing I want to add on that is the book on the shelf.
Correct.
So
that's
everybody,
the snapshot in time.
Although it's digital now, that is the book, and that's the snapshot in time, and that's the book on the shelf. However, here's where we took it further.
Right. So we continue on with some more informational data for all the school sites. And I know we're running tight on time, so I want to get to the real meat and potatoes of it all. So we also have the FMP. So this is the vision plans, the existing and vision plans for both floor plans and site plans, right? And we've got the legends. So really being clear to the community as far as what the intent is for each site. Now this doesn't have, none of this is playing into prioritization. This is just individual sites, what we have currently, what the vision is moving forward based off of the guiding principles of the school. The next page, this is where we start getting into more of the useful information to help with your planning and your prioritization. So the first page of this series is going to be your FCA scorecard. So what was the condition of the school? Again, you're going to be able to select by which grade configuration you're in, and then you could select a site. So if we go to, let's go back to Albert. So Albert had an F for interior finishes, but you'll have some representative photos. Now for us, we did have quite a few photos, and so we had to kind of scrub through some of those in order to get, as you can imagine, loading all these photos could take quite a bit of time. So we also want it to be easily viewable, but not overwhelming and load slowly, right? So Albert Schweitzer, overall grade of a C-, and then this is the breakdown by category. Your FCI, your overall letter grade, very similar to letter grades in school, right? And then percent, and then your SCI, your site condition index score. The next page is now all of your FCA data summarized for you. So when you usually get your FCA data and it's in a PDF or in a binder, you can't, it's still static. Although it's there, it's static. You can't do much with it. If we wanted to look at what the deficiencies are specific to the category, specific to the facility type, whether it's in a classroom, whether it's electrical, what the priority is it critical? Is it maybe kind of off into the future a few years? So if we switch and look at another school, let's see.
And as you're switching to another school, one of the things that I'd like to point out on this is that for those of you that know and have been doing this, you guys will know that on this, we used to have to do this all in spreadsheets. All of this used to have to be continually updated, checked, figured out, all of that, all manually.
Right. So I switched to another school so you could kind of see, the data is changing, and I don't know the condition of most of these schools, but I did see maybe some high dollar amounts or higher, more disparity between the different building systems for cottage. So if we look in, and these are dynamic visuals, and they will update the rest of the visuals on your screen. So if you want to know, okay, I'm trying to figure out, I've got some money for cottage, maybe it's state matching funds, who knows, right? But we've got some money for cottage, we need to do some things. If you click on the pie chart and you're looking at 1, all your information is now filtering for 1. Hopefully you could see that there's a difference between the bars here in terms of it's 2.1 is attributed to critical items. If I further drill in, I can now select, I'm still in critical. Now I'm only looking at plumbing, and I can see where my plumbing issues are. Well, classrooms are a big deal. What are we going to do if we have plumbing issues in classrooms? So now all my information down in my table is showing me all my deficiencies that are in classrooms for plumbing that are critical. And it's summing up your total in 2024 costs. And remember, this is the public facing dashboard. We are a living document. We are working with the district to establish what they want to see in terms of escalation and inflation costs. And we're adding columns to this to show them what the cost would be at the time that they complete the work based off of priority. So this is how you can now quickly slice your data to see. And you could also, wrong button. You could also just filter using these as well, but sometimes it's a lot easier when you're looking at a visual and you could see this big spike in plumbing. You wouldn't know that by just selecting from a slicer up top. So this is really your ability to look at where your deficiencies are from your FCA data. As these deficiencies get completed, whether it's lumped into a project and your project teams on site are replacing assets via submittals and updating records to say we're replacing this asset, classroom C, distribution piping, we're replacing that. Now, when it goes into Kahua, it updates, it's going to replace that deficiency asset. It's now going to refresh it as new, and those costs will start coming off of this list, which then, I don't think we mentioned in the beginning, for the prioritization here at San Juan, your FCI score is your biggest driver to your prioritization. I think it's weighted at about 60%, because if something's failing, that's really, we got to address that first. Maybe more so than having to add an additional office space, right? So the next page is going to give us our summary of all of our FMP and FCA costs by school site. So we could go back to cottage. We were just looking at cottage. So we look at cottage and it's going to tell us where what all of our costs are by program area, by classroom, if you drill into the table, and it's telling you what your costs are from your FCA, how much of your deficiencies, repair costs are attributed to those assets that are failing. And then from those plans, your vision plans, what did we have for modernization costs and what did we have for new construction? So cottage, by looking at this, I could say, oh, in our vision plan, there was no plan for new construction, brand new construction, everything was under modernization. This next page is really where we get into pulling it all together into one view of all of your school sites by grade configuration and what their scores were for each of those categories from that first page. So your categories are across the top, your FCI, fund eligibility, enrollment, program deficiencies, socioeconomic, and special programs, and then your total score. So if I rank this by FCI score, your elementary schools that had the worst FCI ratings come to the top. They may not necessarily be the same order as your total because you have 5 different categories that you're measuring against. So if I could go by what the total score is. So now cottage rise. Oh, and we were looking at cottage. So that was a perfect example because cottage is now at the top of the elementary schools in terms of the most need off of our 5 categories. We also have this button up here that then breaks it down because on this page, you're looking at the rubric score. Now on this page, we're able to bring back in the cost with the rubric score, and we're breaking it out by your FCA, your FMP mods, and your FMP new construction. And same, you can sort your list by different schools. Elementary has the most, so got a couple that are in great condition.
And one of the things that is in here, just so you guys can see, is that there's a medium for the mod. You know, we look at our school sites and we say like, okay, is it more feasible to do a new construction or do we need to do a mod? And we look at those costs to see, and that's kind of what this is doing. And it's kind of helping us with that decision. The other thing is that there's different kinds of mods. There's more of a higher level mod and then a lower level mod. And we needed to know those costs. And so that's what we're in the process of doing as well.
Right. So thank you for mentioning that. So we just, in our last meeting, we wanted to be able to show a light mod and medium mod. So we're adding that column here. We don't have that data updated yet from the team on what that would be, but this column here is now going to reflect light costs, but we have it placeholdered and ready to go. So that is the last page of this dashboard. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and we'll continue on with the rest of the presentation.
That's fantastic, Christine. Thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about the future. What's the next thing we want to do with all this information we're going to use?
Kind of go through that, Nicholas. You know, and we previewed some of that, you know, while Christine was kind of going through the deficiencies to be able to kind of group and sort, you know, what are we going to do in terms of what should we prioritize and give us a high dollar amount. So let me see here. So what you're looking at here is analytics in the scenario planner. So this is a new tool that's rolling out and it'll allow you to take all of your assets that are in Asset Manager and you're able to create scenarios out of it. So really the way it works is you see this this dashboard here and it has a list of all your assets, potential locations, and you can filter by different things like what the prioritization is, what kind of asset types. And once you select whichever assets you want to essentially group into a potential project for scope, you can then send it to another screen, which will send you to the actual planning, if you can hit the next screen, and it'll create a scenario for you. So you can create an unlimited amount of scenarios. You know, maybe I'll do 2 HVAC systems at this school, and then also I'll add the plumbing to that as part of scope. And then I'll add another scenario and really see what the differences are and how it's going to affect all my assets and all my future capital plans. This gives us the ability to be able to do that quickly and to create as many scenarios as possible to figure out which one's going to be the most beneficial. And as things change in real time, for example, things are addressed in maintenance, those dollars will also change, which will affect your future plans. So it gives us a really quick and easy way to start planning for the future in terms of what the condition of the assets are today, rather than looking at something that was on the shelf, you know, a couple of years ago. So this is a new tool that's rolling out and it's extending the asset-centric thing.
And Jason, you and Christine are involved in creating this scenario planning?
Testing it as well, yes.
Excellent, excellent. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Stand for a few minutes so we can take a few questions. But as I hear what you folks have told me, there's a dream that that facility condition assessment tool can be more valuable and no longer static. So when you have a condition assessment, you can then take data from that, bring it into Asset Manager, use it for operations, and then a few years from now, use that same tool set to create your next facility condition assessment, which will then help you create your facility master plan or your capital improvement program. So the data itself will help one day replace the asset that it represents. We've truly round-tripped this asset data now. This roadmap is becoming a reality with what you guys are telling me.
That's correct, yeah.